It is time once again, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it's been a long off season, but football is back. High school football, in particular, is back here in the upstate. And when you talk about high school football in the upstate, there's one place to get that information on a Saturday morning, to get those recaps, to hear those interviews. It is right here on the Saturday Morning Scramble. I'm Cole Bryson Alex Guest. Alongside me, you can actually see us this year. Alex, how about that? We've moved up in the world.
We've moved up 259 days. We get stuff done. Let me tell you.
It took us 259 days, but we are also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Not only can you listen to myself and Alex Guest, you can watch myself and Alex Guest. And none of this is possible, Alex, with two people. Number one, Eagles. As you know, each and every Saturday morning, we are right here at Eagles. Every Saturday, we are at a different location. Today, we are at 8004 Warren Abernathy Highway. It's the west side of Spartanburg. So big shout out, big thanks to Eagles Markets, the team, Melissa, everyone's fantastic, as well as Founders Federal Credit Union. If it were not for Eagles and Founders Federal Credit Union, we would not be able to be on the air each and every Saturday. So we want to start the show by thanking them, as well as a lot of people who we'll get to later in the program that have made this show possible in year number 6, year number 2 with myself and Alex Guest. But Alex, you said it, 200 and how many days?
259.
259.
Since I last saw you.
Since our last Saturday Scramble, as we did last year at Eagles every single Saturday morning. Fantastic year last year. High school football, as we all know in the upstate, it's talked about, it's loved. I don't know that there are many areas of the country that love their high school football like the upstate does. A lot of jamborees, scrimmages going on the last few weeks. We are officially under a week now, Alex, from week 0. I know you love week 0, but that's what it's called, so we're going to have to stick with it, I guess, as long as the high school league continues to put it out there. But week 0, now a lot closer in the windshield. Scrimmages, jamborees, all the preseason stuff, 7-on-7, that's all behind us. What excites you most? And I'll start with you on this one. What excites you most about the 2024 season? Maybe the newness, obviously, where there's a lot of new changes this year with reclassification to divisions in 5A, some new faces with charter schools appearing on the scene, making it interesting from a local standpoint. What excites you the most about this 2024 high school football season?
Cole, I think it's, you said it, I think it's the reclassification. I think what's going to be fun to watch and see how it kind of plays out throughout the season are your schools like your Christ Church, your Southside Christians, your St. Joe's, schools like that have had to make that jump from the 1A level and now playing in 3A football. And I mean, schools like that, the 3 that I just named, they've been able to compete and hold their own against anyone that they've played for years.
Sure.
But now that it's on a consistent week-to-week basis, that's going to be exciting to see. I'm also interested to see how you handle taking every game on the road this year, and then showing up on Saturday mornings and seeing me on Saturdays.
I look good right now.
Well, yeah, you do.
Like
You look great.
Got some sleep last night. But you're right. This Friday, that might change. This week, my 12th season broadcasting high school football. As you said, I'll be on the road every game as the voice of the Rebels. Obviously, with me full-time here in Upstate, we are a Burns Rebel. We carry Burns Rebel football, so excited to be back in Burns this year. And you're right, it's going to be a lot of long nights and early mornings. But you, as you always do, have done a terrific job on the Excel side. And what do I mean by the Excel side? Getting us excited about the potential matchups. Every single schedule, we're looking at it, 5A through 1A, Dorman, Woodmont, J.O.Man, Easley, Greenwood, all the teams in the upstate. We are going to do our best all season long to cover them. Now, kicker, I want to make this very, very clear. If you're in Anderson, we have listeners in Anderson, Greenville, Spartanburg. If you have a team that you play for or like to watch or a fan of, and we're not talking about it enough, shoot us a text. We will get to that school, because obviously with us covering Spartanburg, Greenville, and Anderson, our coverage area is quite hard. So sometimes we do forget or skip right over
it's like 52 schools or something like
that.
that. Yeah,
like 52. So again, shout us out. Let us know what school you pull for, and we will obviously get to that. Let's start with what we saw last night. You and I were at two different scrimmages. Yours got called because of rain, lightning, something, right?
Something.
Something mysterious. I was at Boiling Springs last night, and just to let you know, coming up on the show, we will have audio from Matt Reel, the head football coach of Boiling Springs Bulldogs. I talked to him last night. We'll have audio from Russell Blackston, the head football coach of BHP. You got that audio last night. Coach Morris, Dorman High School, and a few players will join us in person right here at the West Side. And we'll also have audio from Coach Josh Batchelor of Blacksburg. The Jamboree, McDonald's Kickoff Classic you were at last night. What did you take away? I know you saw BHP, a really good team that we cover right here in the upstate.
Yeah, I mean, BHP, they, I got out there and I'm watching them and I'm like, man, they don't necessarily look like themselves. And then after they played, I got the chance to speak with Coach Blackston, and we'll hear that audio in a few minutes, like you mentioned. But their starting quarterback was out last night, out with an illness. And so that really kind of explained a lot for me in terms of, and I mean, one player doesn't make a team, but when it's your starting quarterback, it's a pretty important position. So, they came out with the win over Mount Tabor out of North Carolina. Blacksburg looked really good last night against Bessemer City. I mean, they won that matchup 28-7 over Bessemer City, and I know we'll have audio from Coach Batchelor here in a little bit as well. But and then the Gaffney and Independence matchup last night, the nightcap got started a little bit later than what they had hoped, just because the first two matchups went a little bit late. And then you mentioned it, weather came in. That game actually ended in a 6-6 tie.
Who was that between?
Gaffney and Independence. And both teams, Independence scored first. They made it 6-0, tried for two, didn't get the two. Gaffney scored, made it 6-6, and the extra point was a miss. So that's kind of how you ended up with that 6-6 tie.
They didn't even play one whole quarter, right?
They played a whole quarter, didn't get but a minute and a half into the second quarter, though, before there was lightning in the area and some other rain that came in and all that.
And J.O. Man was a team that was supposed to be there. Obviously, they had some complications. They couldn't make it last night in terms of jamborees, scrimmages, things like that. I talked to Coach Watson yesterday, and obviously it was a logistical error, I believe, on the part of J.O. Man. So interesting there. J.O. Man's going to be a very, very good team this year. The team you saw last night, again, you said Blacksburg very good. I think Josh Batchelor and the Blacksburg Wildcats are going to have a very good season. I think they're going to be a very good team. You know what? He's a fantastic coach, and we'll have audio from him a little bit later on in the show. And then, Alex, what do you think about the potential of 5A having, not potential, but the reality that 5A now has two different divisions, Division 1, Division 2. We all know that 5A is a very tough classification. And with 5A now, the classification of 5A having two different divisions, it doesn't change anything when it comes to the regular season. However, it does make things quite interesting when it comes to the postseason.
Yeah, and I mean, that's going to be interesting to see. I personally, when we had the 4A Divisions 1 and 2, and Big 16, Little 32, all of that, I was never really a fan of it. But now you look at the last decade, pretty much, where Dutch Fork has been so dominant in the 5A ranks, and you've had three different state champions between Dutch Fork, Gaffney, and Hillcrest in basically the last decade in that kind of division. And I mean, honestly, I'm kind of getting a little bit excited because it's gonna get back to, I think, seeing the other teams that they're good enough to win championships, but they're just not quite there to be able to compete with Dutch Fork and the powerhouse program that they have going on down in Irma.
Yeah, that's true. And those two different divisions, 5A will have two 5A state champions this year. It's interesting when you look at those two divisions, and we'll get to them. Dutch Fork, obviously, is in one Northwestern, Gaffney is in another. They're in Division II. So it's going to be very, very interesting for sure. And I want to remind you, you can text the show anytime if you have any thoughts on who you are a fan of. If you've been at preseason jamborees, scrimmages, text the show 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Again, that's 71307. is what we ask you to start your text with that way. You can see it when you text in. Interesting storyline. Obviously, MVP Mountain View Prep, a new charter school here in Spartanburg County. Now, it's not far from where we are right now at Eagles at 8004 Warren Avenue Highway. Mountain View Prep, I have been told, that they have a legit shot in that region that they're in. They have several good players. They've acquired players from other schools. And Alex, when you are a school like MVP, like Mountain View Prep, that's a big storyline that everybody's talking about right now. Without using the R word, they are able to acquire kids that don't have district zones. So if you live anywhere in the county, you can go to MVP if you so choose. And I think that's a big advantage for them. I've been told they're going to be a very, very, very good football team this year.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned the R word. I mean, we don't want to we don't want to accuse them of anything, obviously, and they
say acquire.
Right, exactly, and they're not, and there's schools that are able to do that because of the way that they are. We talk about it week in and week out. But that's going to be very interesting to see what Mountain View Prep is able to do. I mean, they're in the region with Union, Chapman, Woodruff, and Broome. So not necessarily the easiest of regions to be in. I mean, you're talking about Lim Fleming's team in Broome and Harry Cabinet's up at Chapman. I mean, it's going to be a very tough region to be able to get through. But, I mean, Ray Ramsey, first-year head coach up at Mountain View Prep. He's been Spartanburg assistant for so long. Good coach. It's probably I don't want to say probably. He's the right guy to start that program. He's going to have them ready to go next week against Atlantic Collegiate. Look at that. I mean, they're opening their inaugural season at home as well. So,
yeah, that is big time. So we'll obviously follow them. One interesting storyline, in my opinion, Alex, is 1A. You talk about reclassifications. I feel bad for everybody in 1A except Abbeville.
Yeah.
Because it seems as if, and again, I don't know if Abbeville is reality here what they are, but it seems that everyone in 1A will have to go through Big Bad Abbeville. As Abbeville, we all know what they are year in and year out. Them moving to 1A is going to be tough for a lot of those 1A teams.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and there were so many people as the reclassification was happening, and they were moving teams around, and you had your three schools that I mentioned earlier, the private schools here in Greenville or in Greenville County that kind of made that jump up to 3A because of the way that they are. And then you had people looking at Abbeville. I mean, Abbeville's a public school, so you can't really say, oh, well, you have X amount of kids in attendance zone Y, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I mean, you look at those 1A schools, and you're talking about the schools that they match up against Abbeville week in and week out, and there's not much to say about it.
We'll get back to 5A because Hope That Real on the YouTube stream does chime in and says Gaffney all the way. So we will get to 5A, our thoughts on that. A ton to get to on the program, but I do want to get to a piece of audio with Alex Guest from last night. This is Russell Blackson. Russell Blackson is the head football coach at BHP, and you had a chance to talk to him last night. Here's that audio. Maybe.
Customer service report, please.
That is Russell Blackston, the head football coach. BHP just sounds like one of those hard-nosed, guys that get you fired up.
Yeah.
Get you fired up, ready to run through a brick wall, right? So BHP, taking a quick look at them now. They are always a very good team here in the upstate. I'm pulling up their schedule unless you already have it pulled up. I know there's a lot quicker on this Excel document than I am. It takes me 2 or 3 days. You can get there usually one click. I don't know how you do it. I'm still on the wrong side. No, I found it.
3A Region 1.
I found it. Can you believe that? So BHP this season in 3A Region 1, as you said, Bryn Greer Lawrence out of conference. Wow, they have a lot of out-of-conference games. West Side, Palmetto, Chapman. That's what 6 non-conference games.
Yeah.
So they only have a 5-team region. Is that right? And then,
that's right. Yep.
The region games: West Oak, Crescent, Pendleton, Walhalla. Pendleton's a good team, but I tell you this, BHP's probably the favorite in that region.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you heard it in the interview as well. 13-1 last year. Their only loss was to eventual state champion Daniel. I mean, by 5 points. I mean, that's not bad at all.
No, not bad. And you know what? They've been very, very consistent. I know BHP's scrimmage Broome earlier. I believe it was last week. They're always good, well coached by Coach Blackston, and appreciate him taking time last night with you to talk a little high school football, getting you set on the 3A front. A ton more to get to 3A wise, 1A, 2A, 4A, and 5A. We'll also have several other guests coming your way. The best high school football coverage on a Saturday lives right here. We'll continue the conversation next on the Fan Upstate. Continuing the high school football conversation right here on the Fan Upstate high school football coverage every single Saturday morning. This is episode 1 of season 6, getting you ready for the high school football season. All the jamboree scrimmages, for the most part, are behind us. We know there's still a few more left. One this morning at Burnham High School. Burnham will be there. Spartanburg will be there, and a few other local teams as well getting some work in. Mallard Creek will be there. So a pretty good competition this morning over at Burnham High School that will be starting in about 7 minutes from now with game number 1. There are 3 games at Burnham. But let's get right to it. One of our listeners, Alex, on the YouTube stream mentioned Gaffney. Obviously, you are at every Gaffney game. They scrimmaged last night, only a quarter. When you talk about favorites, 5A through 1A classification, we'll go through each classification, obviously tell you who we think's favored in each one. But to me, this season, one of the biggest storylines is Gaffney, not only their talent, but Dan Jones, this being his last season, bringing back a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball. A really good running back, some really good offensive linemen, a new quarterback, Alex. But to me, 5A, Gaffney right now sits at the top as one of the favorites to win the entire state championship, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right, Cole. And I mean, you mentioned that I'm at every Gaffney game, but I hate to, look through the black and gold glasses and say that, but I think you're right. I mean, especially with being split into the 2 divisions and Gaffney being in that 5A Division 2 when it comes playoff time, I think it gives them a really good shot at making it to, I guess, Orangeburg. Yeah.
Because I believe in Division 2, they probably face like the Northwestern.
Yeah.
If Northwestern were to get there, because Northwestern's Division 2 as well. Northwestern's really good, as they usually are.
Yep.
I could very well see Northwestern Gaffney Upper State. I know it's August 17th, but when December or November rolls around, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we're sitting here talking about Gaffney Northwestern Division 2 Upper State Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be no surprise at all to me as well. And I mean, looking at the other teams in 5A, I mean, it's really kind of hard to tell because I feel like everybody else, especially once you get to that 5A Division 1, it kind of feels like it may be just a free-for-all from there.
It could be. There's a lot of good teams up there in that Division 1. And you're right, it may be a free-for-all in terms of who will come out on top in Division 1. 5A, as always, is going to be very, very good. We know it is year in and year out. What's interesting is, obviously, the divisions that we talked about in 5A, but when you look at these teams, Burns, Dorman, the perennial powerhouses of Normal, we know that both of them are not at the top of the mountain like they normally are. And by the way, we'll talk to the head football coach of the Northern Cavaliers, Jake Morris, and if you play this live on location, it's about 30 minutes from now. But the Burns-Dorman aspect of it, they're going to be in maybe a rebuilding year. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's going to really kind of come down to who wants it more, especially when those 2 teams play. I mean, it always comes down to that. But I think for both of those teams, and I mean, we haven't really said much about Burns or Dorman even last year, but I really do think, especially Burns having to be on the road this year, that obviously is going to, as a player, you're just going to have to block out that mental state of, all right, we're having to go on the road every single game, and we don't get to play in front of our home crowd. We don't get the traditional things that we would normally get at home. And I mean, for Dorman, you're talking about Jake Morris. He's in his 2nd year at Dorman, trying to rebuild that program from the legacy that Dave Gutshaw left when he left that program 3 years ago.
And then a 1-year kind of weird time.
Yeah.
With Dustin Curtis just really didn't build any consistency.
Exactly.
So we've said it a lot. We talked about it last year. Jake Morris, I think, is a good coach, but you talk about the situation he's in at Dorman. You're following Dave Gutshaw. Oh, by the way, there was a guy there for a year.
Yep.
And it's hard to build any kind of consistency or continuity when you have 3 different coaches within 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not what Dorman High School was used to. That's not what Dorman football was used to. So I think when it comes to Dorman, they're in a unique time. They're in a unique period that they just, to be quite frank, haven't been in a long, long time. They're not used to, as you said under Dave Gutschall, it was very much consistent. They're not used to being in this predicament.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking with a couple of people last night at the Gaffney scrimmage or at the Gaffney Jamboree that about that specifically and the Dorman situation with Jake Morris kind of in his second year. And, I always say that it really kind of takes 3 years of a coach being somewhere to really kind of get to a point where it's his program. Last year it was kind of like a mix of the Gutschall, Dustin Curtis program.
Sure.
And Jake Morris's first year. 2 years ago with Dustin Curtis there, it was really kind of Dave Gutschall's program still.
It's weird. It's a strange era. It is the best way
Yeah.
I can put it. A strange era for that Dorman football program. Listen, the bottom line is they still have a ton of talent.
Yeah.
They're one of the biggest schools in the state. They should haven't kind of found it. The reality is they're not what they used to be. And I think Jake Morris is the right guy for the job, but
Yes.
it just takes time and building that culture back, getting a consistent staff. Dave Gutschall had like 8 head coaches on the staff.
Yeah.
Let's call it like it is,
Yeah.
And it was just everything was there. The pieces were there, and it was easy to see wins because of everything that was already established. And that's one thing that a lot of them don't realize. But speaking of 5A, right there in that same region, Region 2 5A, and we talk about it a lot right in this program. You'll have Gaffney, Eastside, Dorman, Wade Hampton, Spartanburg, Riverside, Farms, Golden Springs. A team, we talked about Gaffney. I told you Gaffney will be there toward the end of the year, in my opinion. They'll be a team that competes for it all. Boiling Springs will also be a team, in my mind, that is at the end, playing near the end of the season. A very good team in Boiling Springs this season. We'll have audio from Matt Reel from last night in just a few seconds from now. Alex, though, this Boiling Springs team, when you talk about entering the season, having a guy at quarterback and Lincoln Husky, who's been the quarterback now for several years, knows the offense, is really talented player, a great kid, great leader. That is a recipe for success, not just for Boiling Springs, but for any program that can bring a quarterback that experience back. I say Lincoln Husky's the best quarterback in the region.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, and it's not difficult to argue that. I mean, you look at what Lincoln Husky's been able to do. He has the, as you mentioned, he has kind of the tenure of being the quarterback at Boiling Springs. And, I mean, that's another coach that we talk about. He's in his 3rd year at Boiling Springs. So to me, again, going back to that 3rd year kind of coach taking over a program, to me, Boiling Springs is Matt Reel's program now.
It is
It's
now.
not a former coach. It's not anything like that. So Matt Reel, I mean, he's the right guy for that job, in my personal opinion. He's a heck of a coach. He's a heck of a guy outside, off of the coaching field, off of the sideline.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
To your point, I think Boiling Springs made a great hire.
Yes.
And people don't realize, obviously I went to Boiling Springs, so I kind of saw it firsthand. Boiling Springs is a tough place to win.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of compare it to South Carolina and the SEC. It's a tough place to win. You don't have the tradition. You don't have the rich history. You don't have a lot of the resources that other programs. Again, they have the athletes. They have the students. And now, in my opinion, for the first time in a long time, they've got a coach that really can get the most out of their players. And I love Matt Reel. I think he's going to do a terrific job there. Speaking of Matt Reel, here is Matt Reel audio from last night. I caught up with him after they won. To recap, it was a 12-3 win for Boiling Springs over Olympic last night. Thanks. I tell you what, man, Alex, when you talk about a culture, right, establishing a culture in a place like Bowling Springs, Matt Real, I think, hit the nail on the head in that interview when he said, our goal every year is to win the region. I said that from year one. People looked at me crazy. But how else do you establish a culture at a place like Bowling Springs and coming in the groundwork and saying, look, this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, from day one with Matt Rill, it was a complete culture change from what Boiling Springs was used to. I really appreciated in that interview as well, Cole, that he really, I mean, he said we were 10 plays away from being 4 wins better than what we were last year.
Yeah.
You know, you look at last year's schedule, they ended the season 4-7, but you go back and look at it. They lost to TL Hanna by 8. They lost to Dorman by 4. They lost to Burns in double overtime by 7. They lost to Gaffney by 10. I mean, he's not wrong.
No.
They were 10 plays away from being a significantly better team. And I think, you know, going into year 3 of his tenure at Boiling Springs, he's, like we mentioned, it's his program now. It's a complete culture change from what it was 4 years ago under a different regime. And so I think he's, you know, we've mentioned it now. We mentioned it all last year. He's the right guy for the job, obviously. But you got to get those players to buy into it, and he's doing that.
He is. And you know what's fascinating? He's right, because I remember last year at the end of our games, we're finishing up, wrapping up the broadcast, looking at the scores, and Bowling Springs is overtime. Bowling Springs has Burns on the ropes. They have Dorman on the ropes. And it's like every week last year they were so close, and they just fell short so many times. And to his point, a few plays, I don't know, hypothetical to this, whatever, but they're right there. And you almost feel it that they're on the cusp. I remember in 2015 with Bowling Springs, it was very similar that year. I was actually at Bowling Springs still on the broadcast crew. I remember the next year, 2016, the state championship. 15 was very similar to last year, 23, and just a lot of the same kind of close games, right? Couldn't really get over the hump. And then the next year, at Bowling Springs 2016, was the state championship. So obviously, it kind of feels like that. To your point, they've got a good staff. Plays Lincoln Husky quarterback, Jeremiah Favorite, one of the better players in all of the region. He is going to be a problem, especially on the defense. He is really, really good. He showed that last night. He locks up an entire half of the field. He's going to be good. Bowling Springs defense, especially the defensive line. We're talking Matt Real. They're going to be one of the better teams. And when you look at the notes with what we talked to him, last Sunday? Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up now, but Matt Real was very high on his defense. They opened week 0 versus Greer. He talked about the defensive line being the strong point. They run an odd front. They have feel like they have 5 guys they feel good about. They can rotate in, during the plays. Feel good about linebacker Johnson Campbell. Obviously, he's coming back from an injury, but secondary, I mentioned Jeremiah Favorite, 8 D1 offers. He feels good about the guys he has, and that's a good place to be. I'll also tell you this. I think when his running backs are all healthy, he's going to have one of the better running back rooms with a transfer in just a few months ago. He's going to have 3 guys that he can rely on. They're good tailbacks. Kyle Patterson, wide receiver, really good year last year. Him and Eli Mobley are dangerous. And I think that you're going to see this Bowling Springs team take that next step.
Yeah, you talked about Kyle Patterson and Eli Mobley. I mean, Eli Mobley, 6'4", 195 wide receiver. I mean, I don't know, like you picture 6'4", 195. He's tall, he's lanky. I mean,
Yeah.
and he gets down the field fast. I mean,
they looked good last night again. 12-3, only played 2 quarters. They actually scored another touchdown that didn't count. It was a kick return for a touchdown last night. The kickoff was on 5, so they couldn't count that. We'll take a break, come back, continue the conversation, and wrap up hour number 1 of the program. Jake Morris, head football coach for the Cavaliers, joins us at 9 o'clock in person right here at Ingles. Reminder, we're at Ingles on Warren Abernathy Highway. The Saturday Morning Scramble brought to you by Ingles and Founders Federal Credit Union. It is the Saturday Morning Scramble. Good to be with you on this beautiful Saturday. Alex Guest and myself, Cole Bryson. We are at Ingles 8004 Warren Abernathy Highway to the west side of Spartanburg. Glad to be with you on this beautiful Saturday. We have Jake Moore, the Cavaliers football coach, a few players joining us in about 20 minutes on the program. Stay tuned for that. It will be live in person. We mentioned it during the break, Alex, and it's one thing we haven't touched on yet. If you haven't talked about your team yet, let us know. 71307 is the text line. Start your text if you're a fan. We're going to try our best to get to everybody. We know we have a lot of teams in the coverage area, so we're going to try our best to get to each and every one of them throughout the course of these first few weeks. But in 4A, I think the storyline this year is Westside. All signs are pointing that Westside could be a contender to repeat. Last year, we talked about it. Brian Lane took those guys to the state championship and won it. It was a fantastic game. And Brian Lane, a very good coach. Westside, Cutter Woods, they're going to be very, very good with some new additions.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about, you talk about going last year 14-1, state champs, did everything they needed to do to get there and to be state champions. Tough schedule this year, but I mean, you look at, and this is no disrespect to any of the other teams in their region, but you look at their region and you just say West Side's going to win that. I mean, their region is Southside, Emerald, Fountain Inn, Lawrence, and Rim. And again, no disrespect to any other team in that region, but you're talking, I mean, you're kind of comparing apples and oranges.
So Westside is Brian Lane's second season. He's won it first. Creekside towards who they open up with next week. They're at Creekside. They have a bye. That's a weird bye.
Yeah.
Week 1. Then they're at Teohana. Teohana's very young, only returning 4 starters on both sides of the ball. You and I talked to Jason Cohen on Sunday, doing the Teohana preview as well. But then they have BHP, Prince Avenue out of Georgia, and Wedding. 3 out-of-state teams on that non-region slate. That tells me Brian Lane's putting his team through the gauntlet early to make sure they're prepared for, to your point, a region that I think they're the favorite in, Southside, Emerald, Fountain Inn, Lawrence, and Rin. Yeah, I mean, to be quite frank, how do you say Westside's not the clear-cut favorite there? Fountain Inn will be a lot better. Fountain Inn's we talked to Brett Nichols last week as well. He said, listen, they've got some talent. They've got a good core. I've seen them one time, 7-on-7, and I didn't see the line and running backs well, but Brett Nichols has some talent at Fountain Inn, so they're going to be good. We know that Anthony Frater Brand's going to have a good program year in and year out. Lawrence now with Greg Porter running a double wing. I saw them last week against Union County. That's an interesting team, but you're exactly right. No disrespect to them. Westside's the favorite. And in the 4A, when you look at it from a totality standpoint, don't you kind of see a crash course or collision rather coming between them and Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just, I mean, again, 2 state champions from 2023 that are now both in 4A. I mean, Westside was 4A state champion. Daniel was 3A last year. But, I mean, it doesn't matter whether Daniel's 3A, 4A, 5A, 2A, 1A, whatever you want to put him in. Daniel's going to compete and be a good team. And so, I mean, you talked about it. That week of Thanksgiving, what is it, November 29th this year? It's late Thanksgiving.
It is.
November 29th this year, I think we're talking about Daniel Westside Upper State Championship.
No doubt about it. Westside is intriguing on many fronts. They obviously acquired some talent here in the offseason. Bobart, Kit Burns, Monty Weaver, brother, RJ Livingston from Burns.
Yep.
I believe AJ Subtlety, offensive lineman from Burns.
It's Burns West.
There's a lot of Burns Rebels, former Burns Rebels, if you will, on that West Side roster. Listen, I know Daniel's good year in and year out, but I'll tell you this ain't 3A for Daniel where they can cruise to the upper state championship, cruise to the state championship. West Side, if they stay healthy, West Side's going to be a serious problem for Daniel.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and we were talking about Brian Lane, who, I mean, how difficult is it to go to a school that has, I mean, Westside was decent, but, you know, I'm not saying that Westside under Scott Early was world beaters, you know, but how difficult is it to go to a school and in year 1 win a state championship game and only lose 1 game in that entire season?
It's definitely impressive. So you know what? It's gonna be fun to watch. You know what's fascinating? Brian Lane, he's done well everywhere he's been. Obviously, his exit of his tenure at Burns when he went 3-7 wasn't good in 2016, but he was good at Clover, right? Clover, kind of like the West Side team, Clover doesn't have a huge tradition, you know, of being a pretty powerhouse. He won and won 10 games there. And to your point, came in and has done similar at Westside. Texas chimes in on the conversation, 431. Texas says Drake Collegiate is in 4A2. They will be in the mix for 4A. Drake Collegiate, year in and year out, obviously a good program. We don't cover them intensely right here in the upstate because Drake Collegiate's not really our coverage area, but they are good year in and year out. So a lot of fascinating things. Again, we've talked about Abbeville in 1A. We've mentioned Westside. We've talked about 5A. One thing we haven't touched on yet, Alex, in 3A is we're just now under one, kind of doing a quick run through of all the classifications, giving our predictions, and talking about who's going to be the favorites. 3A, it's interesting. We talked about BHP. We've heard from Russell Blackston. I think it's going to be very fascinating to follow 3A in the sense of our local programs like Mountain View, like Chapman, like Broome. The reason I say that is, can they compete with BHP's, Christchurch, Templetons of the world? Oh, by the way, Southside Christian. Oh, by the way, St. Joe's. Very good programs, right? Mike Sunborn, Robert Musser do a fantastic job. Chapman with Harry Cabinets in his 5th season. It doesn't feel like it's his 5th season already. But Chapman Panthers, one of the teams that we cover right here in the upstate, they lost a lot. And what I've been told, it's gonna be a rebuilding year for Chapman. It'll be interesting to see how they compete because for the first time in a long time, no disrespect to Chapman here, but my opinion, for the first time in a while, they have a brutal schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about that schedule. They open next week at Daniel. What a way to open a season.
Congratulations, football here.
You go at Daniel. Yeah. You go from playing at Daniel, then you have St. Joe's coming to town, then you play Boiling Springs, then you're playing Clinton, then you're playing Christchurch, then you're playing Belton Honeypath. Oh, by the way, we haven't even got the region play yet. That's your non-region schedule for Chapman. You got Daniel, St. Joe's, Boiling Springs, Clinton, at Christchurch, at Belton Honeypath. That is if you come out of that, if you don't come out of that black and blue, I'm going to be very impressed. And that's, again, like you said, no disrespect to Chapman, but that's just the nature of the beast when you're playing those teams. And great job by Harry Cabinets to schedule a non-region schedule to get his players ready, 1, for that region, and 2, for an eventual playoff run.
They're going to get tested early, and I mean early. And again, I want to be very clear, no disrespect to them in former years, but they haven't had the schedule in former years, in my opinion, that they have this year. You said it, their non-region schedule is brutal. Daniel, St. Joe's, Boiling Springs, Clinton, Christchurch, BHP. The reality of it is, you better be ready every freaking week because there's no gimmies.
No.
Usually not a region, you feel like, okay, there's one team that we can really match up well against, and it's a game that we can circle and say, okay, no disrespect to teams in Greenwood County that have just been bad for a long time, but to be honest with you, to be quite frank, if a lot of 5A schools, when they look at their schedule every year, they see 1 or 2 Greenwood County schools, again, 1 or 2, not as many as you used to, but 1 or 2, say, okay, that's a win, right? But Chapman, I don't know that you can do that. Obviously, when you get the region, I think they'll have a better shot at their region games than they will their non-region because they have Mountain View, Union County, Woodruff, and Broome. Union County, Mountain View, both in similar situations with first-year head coach. Mountain View, first-year program, right? Woodruff, second-year head coach, Broome and Fleming. Kind of looking at that region, Alex, to me, it's fascinating. Jalen McGill, when he was at Broome, I would have said Broome is the favorite to win the region. However, Jalen McGill transfers to Mountain View as the running back, and that's a big pickup for Mountain View. Huge loss for Broome. This region's fascinating to me because I still feel like Broome has a good shot. Woodruff might be a sleeper. I think Union County is still in that rebuilding process, but Mountain View, I think, is going to have a chance to compete for it day one.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to backtrack, but we you and I both talked with Harry Cabinets on Sunday, and he was sounded very excited for the upcoming season. But he mentioned the scrimmages, the jamborees that they're playing in, the non-region. I mean, his exact quote was, "Those are helping us to prep for our region and playoffs." And then you go to Broome and Lynn Fleming and kind of trying to rebuild that running back position that you mentioned. And I mean, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. They're going to be a team that's in the playoffs, regardless. But I mean, I think Mountain View is going to be real interesting to watch and see what Gray Ramsey's going to be able to do there with the players that they have been able to acquire during this kind of transition going into inaugural season, the inaugural year of the school, and just kind of seeing what they're able to do.
One other team that I did get to see last night, not the entirety of the game because I had wire to wire, obviously, but then after the show, went over to Bowling Springs, Alex Chesney. Interesting story this year. Brett Chappell in his first season, they were 6-6 last year, lost in the second round of the playoffs. They opened with a bang, week 0 at Pendleton, but it's going to be very interesting to see what Brett Chappell does with this new offense. Obviously, in his first season, but I think that Chesney's always going to be in a good spot because of their coaching staff. But you look at it, there's a lot of newness, if you will, with this Chesney football program. Obviously, they're going to be running the shotgun style. It's still old school in some ways, right? However, quarterback for the Chesney Eagles has yet
Who's
to
it going to be?
right?
Yeah.
And last year we had KJ Proctor as the quarterback for the Chesney Eagles, a very good returning starter, 2 years, second-year starter as a senior. And then you've got a guy like Evan Lauder, the JV starter last year, who Coach Chappell at Chesney's very high on. And he told us last week that each of those quarterbacks bring something different to the offense. Both have big arms. And what's fascinating is he said it. You can see both guys on the field for Chesney this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's interesting as well. A lot of times you'll see a team go out there and they've got 2 or 3 different running backs that they're going to throw at a defense. But to have 2 different quarterbacks that your head coach is absolutely 100% comfortable saying, all right, you're going to get the start tonight, but after 5 drives, we're going to throw our other guy in, or even after 5 plays, let's throw the other guy in. So, I mean, that's going to be interesting to watch with Chesney this season to see what they're able to do. I mentioned you have a team that can throw 2 or 3 running backs out there. Chesney's another one of those. They've got 3 guys that Coach Chappell feels really confident in, and Jaden Williams, Kel Thrift, and Leo Dela Cruz as well. I mean, Leo Dela Cruz, he was Player of the Year, Region Player of the Year in soccer this past year. So, I mean,
he talked about, I believe this is the first year for Dela Cruz
playing football, yes.
So, very interesting. They have some offensive line depth. Seniors, Bryson Sprinkle, Aiden Allen, Braylon Branton, wide receiver. It's fascinating. Brett Chappell in his first season will be calling plays. He did bring in Barry Lance, defensive coordinator from North Carolina. They played Chase last night, won that game 20-0. They scrimmaged St. Joe's last Monday. Very good test for them in his first year. And 6 days from now, they have to go to Pendleton. I think that'll be a big test for Brett Chappell and the Eagles week 0.
Yeah, tough way to start the season. But I mean, if anybody's going to be able to do it, it's going to be Chesney.
And you know what? I heard a lot of good things when we were leading up to Chesney making that hire with Brett Chappell. People that I talked to in North Carolina that knew him, that knew of him, had nothing but good things to say about Brett Chappell, about that program that he ran up in, was it Pisgah? Is that right?
Yes.
Pisgah, that's where Brett Chappell came from. And he was, for those that don't know, it's not easy to win up there. I mean, it's a good program, but North Carolina doesn't put the same resources in football that South Carolina does. So Brett Chappell did a very good job in North Carolina, brings a very intriguing style of offense, kind of old school still in a sense. And that's going to be a very interesting program to follow with Chesney this season in 2A Region 1 under Brett Chappell in his first season. Hour number 2 of the program coming your way. We'll talk with Dorman football. Jake Morris and company in the house. We'll continue the conversation right here on the Fan Upstate. Hour number 2 of the program coming your way. I'm Cole Bryson Alex Guest. To my right, we are live at Ingalls on the west side of Spartanburg, Warren Abernathy Highway. So good to be with you as we continue the high school football conversation right here on the Fan Upstate. We are joined now by 2 Dorman Cavaliers, Braden Melton, Drew Darby, both joining us right here, guys. Is this your radio debut or done it before?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First time? No pressure. We're just talking. Pretend the headsets aren't here, right? So I'll tell you this. I've had a lot of terrible player interviews. Okay. So you won't be the worst we've ever done.
That's a good thing.
Let's just set the bar there, right?
Yeah.
Both players with the Northern Cavaliers. We'll start with you, Drew. Obviously, both of you guys are seniors, correct?
Yes,
and your position, Drew?
Linebacker.
Let me ask you this question. As you went into your senior season at linebacker, you have Jake Morris as the head coach now. Coming up through the system, I would guess you've come up through the Dorman system for your entire career. What has it been like now getting into what finally feels like Jake Morris's program? And, in the second season, obviously you have new staff, new changes. Do you finally feel comfortable, or do you feel like you're still getting there from a linebacker standpoint?
Oh, yeah. We're definitely comfortable. It's like the new way of what we do, what he brought in, the accountability and everything, it just makes you confident that you know you work hard and what he's always preached, and he always kept us accountable. So it makes it real good.
This is Drew Darby, linebacker. I said that right?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a mistake once every blue moon, so I want to make sure I have your name right. Drew Darby and Braden Melton for our audience out there right here on the Fan Upstate. 2 Dorman Cavaliers. Drew, what has it been like this preseason as you guys have started with scrimmages, jamborees, getting ready for the season?
It's been awesome. Been physical. That's a big guy over here. And it's been a good way to get started on the season because we're going to come out on fire next week, so it's going to be good.
Absolutely. Week 0 just 6 days away now. Braden Melton, defensive lineman for the Dorman Cavaliers, senior defensive lineman, and Braden Melton. Braden, talk about a little bit to Drew's point, getting ready for the season, but also having a new season, second year under Jake Morris, your head coach. What is it like from a perspective standpoint of entering the season? Last year, Dorman didn't have the best of years compared to Dorman standards. Do you say that you and this team have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder?
Oh, for sure. We have a chip. We ready to come out on fire. He said, we're ready to Dorman. So here, we should be better.
Do you, as a defensive lineman and 2 seniors, do you kind of like when talking heads like us and other people talk about Dorman, not being the Dorman that we're used to being? Does that give you fuel, obviously, as a defensive lineman and linebacker? If it does, how do you use that during the game to fuel you and give you that chip on the shoulder that you're talking about?
Well, yeah, lights the fire and it's been lighting up since last year. And I'm producing before and everything. We use that every day in practice. We know we got to use that. We know we got to work hard every day.
At y'all's positions on the defense side of the ball, you can both speak on this, but what do you expect this Dorman defense to look like in 2024?
Ooh, man, we're going to be fast, physical, get after it, every play, all that.
Fast, physical, getting after it every play. I like it. Those are good. Right?
Same thing. Getting after it. Coach Cooper, our defensive coordinator, definitely got us right.
The man.
Very good defensive coordinator. You're talking about Coach Cooper. Obviously, been Dorman. How would you describe, for someone that maybe hasn't seen Dorman in a few years, what would you describe this Dorman defense as in terms of the formation you guys run? Obviously, everybody's defensive coordinator has a different opinion on what odd front to run or anything like that. But formation-wise, what do you guys look like in 2024?
We got really everything. Yeah, we'll throw everything in.
Different packages?
Yep.
4-3.
We got a 3-5. We got everything.
Do you like that as a player? Having multiple?
Yeah, it kind of switches up because I play will, so I play inside and outside most of the time. So out of like different packages, you get to play different positions and do different stuff. So it's pretty cool.
You know, it's fascinating from a player standpoint. Both of you guys, seniors, when you look at this Gorman team, obviously last year had some good games, had some games where we saw a lot of bright spots, and then obviously had some games where you want to improve on. What would you think, as two defensive players, what do you feel like is the one thing that you two specifically as seniors want to help this team improve on in 2024?
I think energy is a big thing. Last year we didn't have enough energy, not enough want to. Like you gotta want to win to win. You know what I'm saying? So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Will to win, if you will. What would you say on that?
Definitely say that energy up your always trying to win out the game. Knowing we can win, we beat everybody here, everybody we play. So knowing mindset, come out there.
Are these preseason jamborees and scrimmages, do you feel like you take a lot from them, or is it more as if it's a glorified practice and you're just ready for week 0?
Yeah, I mean, you take a lot from them, but it's more of a glorified practice, and it's more of just getting better. It's not more of winning those games.
Sure.
Because, I mean, we're doing a lot of what we need to work on instead of trying to win the game. Because, I mean, once again, it's just a scrimmage. We're not game planning them.
And your goal is not necessarily, I mean, obviously you want to win, but your goal is not to try to do everything you can to win. You've seen some good competition throughout the preseason. I saw you guys Monday against Hillcrest, a very good team.
Yeah.
What do you think that in 2024, what do you think would be an area of the defense that maybe surprises some people that they're maybe not necessarily expecting from going this
I think our defense.
Really?
Yeah, we got especially our 2 young corners. Nobody knows about them probably, but they're fast, they're physical, you know, they're up there. They can play with us. They're both sophomores.
Really?
Yeah.
2 sophomore DBs, Braden Melton and Drew Darby, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. I want to make sure I have those names right. I did write them down, but they went away, so I'm memorizing them. Did you delete them on purpose?
I did not delete. You
you
just don't know how to work technology.
That's probably true. Braden Melton, Drew Darby. You two guys playing defense, did you have anybody growing up that you looked up to as kind of like not a mentor, but you idolized their game from a football standpoint, whether it be at the college or pro level?
Everything I know.
Really? What about his game did you feel like you related to? So what about you?
I think Luke Keefe that's my guy right there. And I loved Ray Lewis when I was little. I loved him. So I like the Ravens now. That's Ray Lewis.
Sure.
So yeah.
You know, it's a physical game with you both playing defense. Do you have any? We talked about this a lot during the week. I have a show. It's daily 3 to 7. We talked about this earlier in the week with the Guardian cap helmets, and I wanted to ask a few players y'all's opinion on this. I don't know if you guys wear it or not, but the cap helmets have the foam on the outside. Do you feel like the rules now for defenses and the way the game's called from an official standpoint, do you feel like the game's a little bit more dangerous than it's been? Because we've seen concussion rates go up and up and up. But I'm just curious from a player standpoint, at the high school level, is that something you think about here in the game? I didn't think about that.
I feel like the defense has kind of got a little bit, harder to play because there's been so many rules put in.
Sure.
So it's a little bit harder to do.
In terms of maybe helmet to helmet?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All those.
Jaden Melton, Braden Melton. See, I told you I'd do it. I told you I would do it. If I said it enough, I'd mess it up. Braden Melton, Drew Darby, joining us right here on the Saturday Scramble. Both of you guys are on the defense side of the ball. Week 0 is just 6 days from now. For those listening, who do you have week 0 and what are you excited about? Good team, Greenville, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
We got to come out on fire, come out hot, do something like that.
Yeah, hopefully we kick off first.
Get on defense first.
Yeah.
Is that something you talk to coach about? Let the defense go out there first?
Shoot. We need to. Yeah.
Maybe a future conversation. You know, you said something about not underestimating. My last question for you two guys before we have a coach on: do you feel like that was something that's happened in the past in terms of underestimating opponents, or do you feel like that's something you always have done a good job of preparing and not underestimating?
I feel like we historically, last year we underestimated.
Sure. And I guess that happens, right? When you're a program like Norman who's seen this level of success that you guys have, it does happen. And it's a good reminder, right? You have to sometimes get, punched in the mouth to have those reminders. And it's a good reminder to have. But now as seniors, you guys both knowing that, I'm sure that's sort of positive. All right. What do you look forward to the most 2024 season before we let you run? Specific game, or is there one game that you circle?
Burns.
Okay.
Circle that. Yeah.
Both of them. All right. Those are the two that they have circled on their calendars. Braden Melton, Drew Darby, both on the defensive side of the ball for the Norman Cavaliers. We appreciate you guys. And now you can say you can add radio to your resume.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys. We'll have Jake Morris on, the head football coach of the Norman Cavaliers. Y'all can pass the headset to him. And we will have Coach Morris on momentarily. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Those are two Dorman Cavaliers as we get our headsets situated and bring on the head football coach of the Dorman Cavaliers momentarily. Appreciate you being a part of the show. You can text the show as a reminder anytime. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. 71307. Welcome in Coach Jake Morris, the head football coach of the Dorman Cavaliers. Coach, you've had two players who have interviewed and debuted on the radio now. Both of them did a fantastic job. How proud of you? How proud of them are you? Not only from being here this morning, but what you've seen from them this senior season.
Well, yeah, I mean, experience. He's a good job. Especially this program. It's a little league, middle school year, all the way through to the last year. Both doing a good job.
Coach, I tell you what's fascinating talking to both of your players was the last question I asked them about the player perspective of maybe underestimated opponents. Is that something that just comes with being a Dorman type program, or is that something you kind of have to reinforce?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that you have to reinforce every year.
Really?
I think you get teams sometimes that don't want to understand anybody. You get teams sometimes that think, hey, we're going to walk in
Sure.
all over, and that's not the case. Everybody's talented. There's a lot of good coaches in the upstate, especially. So, that's definitely not the case. So I think these two do a good job of that.
Took some bumps and bruises last year, but from a head coaching standpoint, what were you able to learn and take away from those bumps?
Yeah, a lot of bumps and bruises. A lot of really this year, I feel like this year, so really knows right about it. Just be able to have my all those things, kind of official Friday night, just all that stuff, builds up and kind of technique, to go. Sure, weekly.
Yeah.
So that's good for me. But Coach I just support me to be great. It's all obviously way too much investment. Having been, and now we had Rocky.
Coach, just real quick, I mean, these guys mentioned three NFL Hall of Famers when they talked about guys that they looked up to and guys they want to model their game after. We talked about Luke Kuechly, Ray Lewis, and J.J. Watt. I mean, do you see similarities between these two guys and the game that those Kuechly, Watt, and Ray Lewis play? I mean, talking NFL to high school, but do you see the similarities there?
I think passion's
Yeah.
That's the big thing. You see these two very passionate about football, very passionate about games. We got to really pull back a little bit sometimes. But he plays middle linebacker, so middle linebacker.
You'd rather have to reel them back, though, than
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes. You can't keep set up. Sure. Reel it back. So those two, you got to do that. But
talking to Jake Morris, the head football coach of the Norman Cavaliers in the second season. Something I found fascinating that you just said was the first year notes that you took away, slowing down. From a coach's standpoint, is that something that you can't really learn as an assistant, that you just kind of have to experience as a head coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, it's the whole about this year. It's like whirlwind, going to fire, and they were mine. When you go through this, everything's left and right, left and right, left and right. People trying to figure it out. Really trying to figure it out. People trying to figure it out.
what you do first time. I think this is
Sure. No doubt about it. What are some things that you have talked to your team about? We've already talked about, not underestimating opponents, but what are some things that you have written down from last season that you really wanted to emphasize going into 2024 season?
really just, we talked about it all last season. A lot of those things you saw finish last year. Not just get there, show up, and quit. Sure. So that's been a big one.
It's fascinating to look at this region and now 5A, two different divisions. What are your thoughts on not only the region, but 5A having Division 1 and Division 2?
To me, it's normal. That's what I played in. And had the big 16 criteria. So it's normal to me. Kind of feels like we get back the way it should be. But, I think it's good. I think it's good for 5A. It's a lot of that. Like 5A high school. So, everybody
Talking to head football coach of the Norman Cavaliers, Jake Morris. Coach, what does your offense look like at the quarterback position specifically? I know you have a couple of guys that you've been running out here in the preseason. What do both of those guys provide for you, one older and one younger?
Yeah, I think last time Cole Bryson kids played with started up since Springs last year for the which did a good job. Since 2 games in the option. It's a tough market. So he did a phenomenal job this offseason. And he's done a good job. He's been really nice. We've got Corey Anderson off. That's all we want. It's probably going to be a good program. That's very long. Really high football IQ. Both those guys. Right now, they're fighting for that position. They're also part of the school. Watch and see. You kind of coach the that's all.
Talking to Jake Morris, Coach, we appreciate you hopping on and coming out and bringing some players. It means a lot to be able to showcase your program and your guys. We'll obviously talk to you again during the season as the season goes on. Best of luck to you. That's Jake Morris. We'll take a break, continue the conversation, get your thoughts as well. All coming up next right here on The Fan Upstate. Rolling along in hour number 2 of the program, I'm Cole Bryson alongside Alex Guest. It's the Saturday morning scramble each and every Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. right here on the Fan Upstate High School football coverage like nowhere else. We've talked to Jake Morris. We've talked to a few Gorman players. We've heard from Russell Blackston. We've heard from, who else have we heard from? Alex, I'm forgetting. Is that everything? Oh, Matt Real, Golden Springs. How can I forget? Golden Springs last night over at their scrimmage that they had. A fantastic event last night that Dorman, as we talked to Jake Morris, those guys were a part of. They played Union County last night and took care of business against Union County. Obviously, Union County first-year head coach Quinn Isom, a program that we haven't talked about a lot yet, but we will, obviously, right here on the show. Alex, Quinn Isom is really embarking on a challenging situation. And I mean that in a good way because he knows that. He has a Union County program that's been struggling over the last few years. And Union County, not that long ago, they tasted a very high level of success, but it seems like it's been a long time since that's happened.
Yeah, it does seem that way, Cole. And you mentioned Quinn Isom. I mean, he's a really good football coach and kind of came into Union this year, and he's really looking to make that culture change and shift the culture of what Union County has had the past several years. I mean, we talked to him on Sunday afternoon, and he mentioned that they're really trying to get the kids over the hump. They're really trying to get those players over the hump and teach them how to win the right way. And that doesn't, to him and to his coaching staff, teaching the players how to win the right way doesn't just mean on the field. You know, he mentioned that means in the weight room, the summer camps, the 7-on-7s, the games, in the classroom. I mean, so he's trying to teach them to become better competitors across the board in all aspects of their day-to-day life. And I think that's really what you need in a head coach, especially going into Union County that's just really kind of fallen off and struggled in the past several seasons. I mean, they've got a junior quarterback, returning starter, and Quay Brannon.
Yeah.
Coach Isom mentioned that he's a great decision maker. He capitalizes on a lot. And so that's really what you're looking for in terms of trying to shift the culture.
Yeah. You know what's fascinating? Last night, you go look at that game. You see them versus Gorman last night. Talking about Union County, you said, well, Gorman being pretty good. You know, it's hard to look at a scoreboard when Gorman plays Union County and see any bright spots for Union County, but they do have more players playing this season than they had last year. They will be an improved team in 2024. They just have an incredibly tough schedule. So, again, I want to say big thanks to Braden Melton of Dorman and Drew Darby of Dorman and Jake Morris, head football coach of Dorman Cavaliers, for joining us just a few minutes ago right here on the Saturday Scramble. Looking at, before we move on from Dorman, Alex, looking at their schedule, you mentioned that they do open up with Greenville next week. That game is at home, and then they have a very tough test. Dorman does. And Jake Morris' second season, week 1 at Racing, Georgia. That'll be no easy opponent for the Cavaliers. And then they host, they go to Greenwood. They have a bye week, and then region play begins. Riverside, Burns, Golden Springs, Spartanburg, Hampton, Gaffney, and they finish the season with East Side. You know, what I do find fascinating with Dorman is you've heard the players talk about last year, maybe that team underestimated some opponents, right? And they know that this year, just because they're Dorman, they can't do that. But I do believe they'll have some quality opponents in the offseason. What I do like that we haven't talked about yet, not just Dorman's cases, but everyone this year in high school football, the non-region games actually matter. And you and I had that conversation last year, and I've been saying that for quite some time, is my displeasure with the format in the high school league, putting these non-region games on the schedule and them meaning absolutely nothing. And, you know, let's take Region 2 5A, for example. Alex, it used to be a 5-team region. So there were 4 region games. So you had, what, 6 non-region games that absolutely meant nothing toward playoff implications. And I didn't like that, and I was not a big fan of that. So I'm glad that that's gotten changed. It's going to be interesting, though. They are kind of taking the North Carolina model with RPI, using the max reps rankings. when the season's over. I don't know how I quite feel about that. Maybe let's just give it a season. But maybe that's the best model. I think you have to have, whether it's that or a point system, you have to have some kind of structure there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the folks listening at home and watching on the stream, they can't see the spreadsheet that we're looking at, but you're probably looking at it and you're like, what are these extra columns here that weren't here last year? I mean, a couple of the extra columns are opponents' win percentage. And so that's kind of one of the things that the RPI is going to look into is the opponent's win percentage. And I'm with you. I don't necessarily know that I love it. I don't know if that is the right way to go, but I'm with you in terms of, let's give it a season. Let's see how it plays out this year. And, we'll see what it does. But I'm torn on it right now, Cole.
Well, the reality of it is, when a lot of people hear it, max preps usually is something that's operated by the schools themselves.
Yes.
However, these rankings, from what I've been told, are not. So the rankings are based on teams conference or out of conference, their strength of schedule and other factors. I think that's where it comes in to help rank those postseason opponents. It's going to be fascinating this season, this postseason, not only with the two divisions in 5A, but with that max prep ranking coming into play. It'll be fascinating where teams are placed with that ranking. Again, that came from the North Carolina model. North Carolina already does that with a ranking system to help determine seeding for the playoffs. I want to remind you, you can get in touch with the show several different ways. You can tweet the show anytime at Saturday Scramble. Alex is on Twitter at
a guest 519.
I am at Cole Bryson on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it. You can follow us there. Text line always open, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. And then you can also call the show in these remaining 30 minutes. Phone lines are open, 844-FAN phone. But first, I want to go to a little bit of audio from Josh Bachelor. Josh Bachelor and the Blacksburg Wildcats. You saw it last night. They had an impressive win, from what I was told, right?
Looked very impressive. 28-7 win over Bessemer City. I mean, they both sides of the ball, they're fast. I mean, they're getting to the ball on defense very quickly. And offense, I mean, you got a couple of receivers and a running back that just really looked really impressive last night.
They fell behind early 6-0. Got a few big passes to set up a touchdown run by Dominic Odom to be down 7-6. Talked about the Blacksburg Wildcats last night. They had a punt by Bessemer City out over the punter's head out of the end zone for a safety. Blacksburg won 8-6. Momentum got going to Blacksburg right there. Tristan Hare, Odom, Zion Harris, Sean Rogers. Really good players for the Wildcats. Quarterback Josh Sims got better and better as the night went on. As you mentioned, the defense was flying around last night for Blacksburg. Lots of energy, lots of excitement. They shut down Bessemer City late in that game. And as you said, they had a very impressive win. They played Ware Shoals week 0, Cherryville week 1, Union County week 2. There's a possibility the Wildcats could be looking 2-1-3-0 to start the season as they are much improved. And it's fascinating talking to Josh Bachelor. We have audio from him last night. He's a very good football coach. And here is Josh Bachelor audio, his thoughts on last night's win. Just looking at the season from a whole, another quick response here, but good audio from Coach Bachelor. Interesting stuff there from Blacksburg. We'll be excited to follow them throughout the 2024 season. Obviously, Josh Bachelor has done a good job there at Blacksburg. Tough place to win. He's doing a fantastic job. A team we have not talked about in 3A, Alex, is Woodruff. They are now in their second season under Brett Sloan, a program that it is found where they expect to be in quite some time. They haven't tasted the level of success that they were used to tasting. And it'll be interesting to see if Brett Sloan can be that guy. They lost in the first round of the playoffs last year, went 4-7, won just enough games, I think one game to get into the playoffs. And, I think they have a lot to build on. You and I talked to him on Sunday.
Yeah, we talked to Coach Sloan on Sunday, and, they're really at a point where they're trying to understand everything better than what they did this time last year. And Coach Sloan really feels like they are at that point where they're understanding everything kind of across the board better than what they were last year. He said that the players are really tending to pick up on things faster. And really, he talked about, you got a quarterback in TJ Morris that is a returning quarterback. He threw for 2,700 yards last year. He's a pocket passer. He's really athletic. And he's really a name that throughout the course of the season that you're not going to be able to ignore. Running back in Aiden Gibson, a sophomore. He was an all-starter, or he was an all-region finish last year as a freshman. And then you talk about just an overall team. Snoop Green, a senior, Rylan Renfro, a junior. They run that base 3-4 defense that you're going to be looking at as well. So three returners on the defensive line.
It's a fascinating team with Woodruff in the region that they're in, because we know that Woodruff is very passionate about football, and I think that they have a chance this year to surprise some people. Again, it's the second season. We talked about it earlier in the show. Obviously, it takes time for coaches to get a lot of that newness wear off. Jake Morris, I thought, said it perfectly in the program. Head football coach Norman County said, "Look, that first year, it's kind of a struggle, right? You're just learning a lot of new things. You're having to take bumps and bruises, and you gotta learn as you go. Like, even though you can learn from the best head coaches there are, you still have to experience it for the very first time." And Brett Sloan, I believe, probably was in a similar situation at Woodruff. I think the biggest thing for Woodruff is they've got to develop that winning culture to get back to where they can expect to win regardless of who they play. They haven't had that culture in some time. Coaches that have kind of revolved in and out of that program that just haven't gotten that program to where they need to be. It's fascinating. I think Brett Sloan is the guy for the job, but it's going to be fun to watch in 3A. Also in 3A, I think we haven't talked about yet, Broome. Lynn Fleming entering his 8th season. Alex, they were 9-3 last year. Very good season for the Centurions. Lost in the second round. They will get tested here in about 6 days as they open with BHP. Going to be fun to watch Broome. Obviously, losing Jalen McGill running back is a big, big loss, but I still think Lynn Fleming has established a culture there, and they're still going to be a very good team.
Yeah, and we heard BHP's head coach Russell Blackston kind of touch on that game next week earlier in the program, but you're talking about two teams that are going to more than likely going to be in the playoffs come next week in between Broome and BHP. But Lynn Fleming, he really spoke highly of his system, and he's got Jamison Derryberry, who's a junior. He's grown up in that Broome system. He moves really well. He can run when he needs to, but he's really more so that pocket passer, and has just an absolute wealth of experience. But you mentioned losing the running back transfer to Mountain View Prep. It's going to be a running back by committee this year. He's got 3 guys that are going to do a great job. They're going to really rely on to play defense.
Well, that's the problem. Those running backs are also going to play defense. Yeah. And I say a problem. It could be a good thing, but it could be a problem.
Yeah.
Lynn Fleming talked to you and I on Sunday. He said that exact thing. Look, we got 3 really good running backs, but you have to rely on those guys to play defense.
Precisely, yeah.
And, you get the war of attrition. You start getting late games. And I think that's something that's not talked about a lot. When we talk about 5A teams that don't really have to experience the same level of depth or lack thereof that the 3A programs do. When you talk about Broome, for example, but just to your point, they do have 3 good backs. However, they had one that was going to take the majority of the snaps to give those other 3 time on defense, and now that won't be able to happen. That'll be, I don't want to say a big blow, but it obviously does affect you.
Yeah, and we had a texter earlier in the show that mentioned Gray Collegiate, and that's really, that is exactly the reason why the high school league kind of implemented these new rules of, hey, we're going to bump these teams up that do have the ability to, acquire players like they do, and that have kind of a larger base to kind of pick their players from, and they're not necessarily having to play both sides of the ball every snap of the game. But I mean, that's really going to be something interesting to look forward to this season for Broome, and seeing those three running backs, play both sides of the ball, two linebackers and a safety.
You mentioned Jamison Dearberry, coach's son. His dad, Spencer, obviously a coach on the staff of Broome. By the way, Broome will be playing in about 1 hour from now. Spartanburg just kicked off. I believe Spartanburg's playing Mallard Creek this morning over at Broome High School. I believe that's right. And then Broome will play at 10:30, like I said, about an hour from now. But Jamison Dearberry, a very good quarterback. I think, as you said, a pocket passer that I think will impress people this year. He can be versatile. He has a wealth of experience. You mentioned those three running backs, Alex, but having grown up in that system, he knows it. So you're not going to have to rely on this guy to learn a lot on the fly. Has a lot of experience. Still feel like it's a veteran team. Does win clinic with a lot of juniors, more senior heavy up front. Sophomore offensive lineman, but Trayson Suber, all region starting safety. Wide receivers, Breeze Walkerman, Brayden Simpson, Grayson Bradley. And then on the defense, you got one of the better players in the region, Bryson Arrowwood, who's a senior. Amaje Barton, defensive back, senior for the Centurions, a very good player. They lost a really good offensive lineman, Furman, last year, and a defensive tackle to Anderson. They scrimmaged St. Joe's on Tuesday, or maybe it's
they scrimmaged on Tuesday. It's St. Joe's
today. Okay, so St. Joe's Broome. By the way, St. Joe's will be a very good test for Broome today, and again about that game will probably start about 1 hour from now. Speaking of St. Joe's, a fascinating team, Alex. We talked to Eric Nash on Sunday doing a little Saturday morning scramble preview. His first season. But this is not, anything new for Eric Nash, who, if you don't know, and you're listening out there, Eric Nash is no new man to the game of football. Longtime offensive line coach at Walton College, and he was on staff at St. Joe's the past 3 or 4 years, right? So he has experience there, and now he gets to take over as the head man. We'll dive into the St. Joe's conversation, Southside Christian, Mike Sonneborn, a few other Greenville County teams that we expect to be very good in 2024. All coming up. Your last chance to weigh in as well, 71307, right here on The Fan Upstate. continuing the conversation, finishing up episode 1 of season number 6. Can you believe that season number 6 is already here? Alex Guest, episode 1. You mentioned it. We came into the program this morning at 8 a.m. We made it. We had to wait 250 some odd days.
259 days.
Between the last scramble?
The last scramble and the scramble.
That's a long time,
That's too long.
Too long. You're right. We made it, though. Appreciate those tuning in this morning via terrestrial radio, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, 97.7 FM in Greenville, anywhere in the world on the free Odyssey app. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Over 160 people tuned in right now on the stream. So not only can you listen to the show, you can watch the show on those 3 streams that I just told you about, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. A couple of Greenville County teams to dive into. We'll touch on Alex St. Joe's. We mentioned them with Eric Nash open up a Cardinal movement. He's been an assistant coach the last 6 years, still getting coaches and logistics in place, but he's still the AD as well. So it's going to be a busy year for old Eric Nash at St. Joe.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that. I mean, we've seen that in the past. I mean, coming to mind specifically for me is Phil Strickland when he was at Gaffney. He was the head football coach. He was the athletic director. It's a tough job, to be one or the other. But when you put both of them together, I mean, it's a very busy year. But talking about St. Joe's, I mean, the jump from 1A to 3A, they're really getting ahead during summer with players at voluntary workouts. Eric Nash was very pleased with his turnout at voluntary workouts. But, I mean, you talked about it, Eric Nash, the offensive line coach at Wofford for 15 years. He's been the offensive line coach at St. Joe's for 6 years, and they're going to run a significant amount. They're going to try to win the kicking game, but they are going to run a significant amount. Cade Alt, returning senior quarterback, his twin brother is the senior, so it's going to be Alt under Alt.
Alt under Alt. How about that?
If you go with that, but two brothers. Jimmy Kaiser calling the shots, offensive coordinator for St. Joe's. But Eric Nash said, just because it's my first year as head coach, really going to be a similar look to years past.
For sure. It really will be. And I'll tell you what, the program's in good hands.
Yes.
When it comes to Eric Nash, a fantastic hire there. Let's keep it in Greenville County. Southside Christian, Mike Sonneborn, his 8th season. They went 9-4 last season. Lost in the quarterfinals. Alex, I know that year in and year out, Southside Christian is going to have really good skill position players. The biggest concern this year with Mike Sonneborn is depth on the offensive and defensive line. They graduated 2 senior linebackers last year, 2 starters. Young at linebacker. Abbeville will be a challenge for them, obviously, starting out. Stout, though, from what Coach Sonneborn tells us on the defensive line. Jack Criswell at quarterback, 6'4", 180. He's a transfer from Fountain Inn High School. Very good passer. You know what? He has a potential to run a little bit as well. And then you know what? They're looking really good at the running back position as well. So this Southside Christian team, we say it every year, is going to be a contender, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned 9-4 last year. They also making that jump from 1A up to 3A. But I mean, they are they're always going to be a force to be reckoned with. You mentioned they open at Abbeville. They play Mountain View Prep after that. Anderson Christian. But, I mean, that's going to be a fun region to watch with Powdersville, Palmetto, St. Joe's, Christchurch, Carolina, and Southside Christian.
It really will be. It'll be fun. It'll be competitive. It'll be tough. I know that. It'll be a tough region. Let's continue the conversation with Powdersville. We talked to Coach Robert Muster in his 13th season. There is a long list of Powdersville head coaches, Alex, and it is one guy,
Robert Muster. Powdersville, a newer school. They've only been open for 13 years. But, I mean, Robert Muster, he is the guy that Powdersville wants. I mean, he's what Robert Muster has been able to do at Powdersville. Last year was a little bit of a down year for him, a little bit rebuilding season. They were 5-6. They lost in the first round, but they're returning 3 of their 5 offensive line this year. 2 of their receivers return. Their starting running back returning. They do have a first-year starter in Keegan Reed at quarterback. He's a junior, but he's a pocket passer. His mechanics are good. He's very coachable, according to Coach Muster. Their senior running back, Brandon Waldrop, he split time with the senior last year. He's a grinder. He's very special. He's very low coming out of the backfield, so he knows how to get positive yardage. He's got really good hands, and he's very versatile.
It's going to be fun to watch them year in, year out. Robert Muster has a good team. As you said, it was a down year last year, and he knows, all from him as we did on Sunday, he knows that they're going to bounce back this season. So it'll be very fun to watch him as well. Back to Greenville County in his 5th season. Not a bad resume to have. 5 years and 2 state titles to show for it, as Quinn Hatfield went 13-2 last year, state champions again. They open season on Friday. They did play Wren last night, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
You know, it's fascinating with them. The talking point with Christchurch this year is the jump, right? You mentioned it earlier, 1A to 3A. And you and I talked to Coach Hatfield on Sunday, and it's fascinating because that jump, a lot of coaches will take that as, well, it's going to be tough at 3A. But he told us that it really does put chips on their shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving them the motivation. I mean, and he's heard it. He's heard the talk year in and year out. I think a pregame and a postgame interview before and after the state championship game last year, he made mention of, well, you know, I mean, we're just coming out here, we're playing football, and that's what, you know, I get paid to coach football. These players, they come out here, they're playing football. They do what they love. We're doing what we love. And if you want to take that from us and move us up to a higher classification, we're going to come out here and do the same thing week in and week out.
And I think they will. Listen, will they experience some bumps and bruises? Sure. It happens when you move up in classification at some point, right? But the reality of it is they're still going to be a good team, right? They're still going to have talent. Quarterback Tucker Hendricks, a senior, preferred walk-on at Clemson. He's been going to camp at Clemson since the 7th grade. He'll be joined in the backfield by running back Michael Martin, who's a freshman. A lot of upside there. And then one of the most special players in the upstate now is Jackson Rep. Great hands, competitor, very good receiver. He doesn't have the size, but guess what? He's going to South Carolina, and Quinn Hatfield talked about that. Well, let me back up and just correct myself. He has an offer from South Carolina. Coach Hatfield told us he hasn't decided yet. He has been offered a scholarship from South Carolina, and Shane Beamer very high on Jackson Rep. They opened week 0 at Hammond, but he's one of the more interesting players, Alex, in 2024 who's been following.
Yeah, and you mentioned Shane Beamer very high on Jackson Rep. A direct quote from Shane Beamer, you know, he's a kid that they talk about.
Sure.
It's everything. Jackson Rep is a kid that when South Carolina looks at their recruiting board and they're saying, hey, these are the kids we're going to go after, Beamer looks at Jackson Rep and he says, that kid is everything that we want in a receiver.
For sure. And you know what? He's very good. I saw him last year. Wise, you and I saw him one time.
Yeah.
He's got talent, man. He's going to be very, very good. Again, they open up week 0 at Hammond, talking about Christchurch. He wants this team, Quinn Hatfield wants this team to just stay hungry. His message, when we talk to him, keep climbing in that jump from 1A to 3A. The roster size differential is a real theme going to 3A. When you're talking about Preston 3A players, 60, they have 3 offensive linemen and defensive linemen who played 120 snaps last year. So they have experience coming back. I think a lot of the positive of Christchurch is Tucker Hendricks, the quarterback who has that experience. You're going to look at them as a team that's going to be competitive over in Greenville County. A lot of us talk about them and say they have advantages because they can get any play. Well, guess what? That's Greenville County. I mean, we can't say all Christchurch has advantages with other Greenville County schools. Every Greenville County school is unique in the way that they can acquire talent. And, the lines, if you will, in Greenville County are unique. And that's why, to be quite frank, you see a lot of players transferring year in and year out over in Greenville County. Keeping the conversation in Greenville County, Hillcrest and J.L. Man, 2 teams that are going to be very good this year. We talked to Bennett Swaggart, we talked to Scoot Watson. Week 0, Bennett Swaggart, Hillcrest goes to Lawrence to face a new head coach over there in Greg Porter. And Hillcrest is going to be a team, 2nd season for Bennett Swaggart, had a huge win last year at Vernon in the playoffs. They're going to be a team that's going to be competitive in 2020.
Yeah, when you have a senior quarterback that's one of the most talented quarterbacks your head coach has ever seen in Caleb Sutton, he's getting all kind of interest. No one's necessarily offered yet, but he's been getting all kinds of interest, and it's a name that everybody's going to keep track of. He's 6'3", A little bit bigger of a body, but he's a passer. He's really kind of a pocket passer, but he's very athletic. And Jackson Free is their backup quarterback, and he's only a sophomore.
I saw him on Monday night at Dorman, and they're in a good situation. Talking about Hillcrest with Caleb Sutton, a very good quarterback to your point, and Jackson Free, kind of like the future of the program after this year. If they ever need him, he can fly, and he can get after it. Hugh Harris was the backup running back last year. Coach is excited about what he could have. A couple of kids in the program that they could see at that running back position, like Josh Smith. The offensive line, he wants that to be a focus. Bennett Swagger for Hillcrest going into season 2. They have Bryce Rainwater at left tackle as a returner. He's coming to Furman. The depth of the program as a whole, Alex, has strengthened. The secondary, though, will still be a little young for Hillcrest. Young secondary, Chris Riggs, 2026, class of 26, he's excited about, but I think the secondary for Hillcrest will probably be that area where they have to learn as they go, if you will. Now, J.L. Mann, 5th season, Scoot Watson, 11-3 last year, lost in the semis, a play or two away from playing in the state championship.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that game that they lost in the semis last year at Dutch Fork. I mean, we were up here, we were listening to that game, and we were going back and forth like, oh my gosh, are they going to pull this? Yeah, they're going to do it. And they had the lead late in the game, had the game in hand, and then just, like you mentioned, a play or two away from being in a state championship game.
J.L. Mann's going to be good. They're going to be good at quarterback. Cloud Darnell was the backup last year. He has a strong arm, a downfield threat, willing runner, full threat guy. Henderson, Zach Stewart as wide receiver. Running backs, they have O.J. Jones and Daniel Martin, very good running backs. George Sullivan at left tackle for J.L. Mann, an Army commit, very good player there. 3 to 5 guys back on the offensive line. Their offensive coordinator, Tom Cummings, does a good job. And Coach Watson kind of calls the defense. He's a defensive-minded guy. They run a multiple 3-4-4-3. They have some really good studs on that defense. Wyatt Ward, all-state linebacker. Arcavius Thomas, defensive tackle. Riggs Manning, Obadiah Jones, linebacker. That's a physical group that I saw last year. They, according to Coach Watson, they worked extremely hard in the weight room. They played Westside on Monday. We're supposed to play Butler last night with Gaffney. That game did not happen. But J.L. Mann is going to be, Gaffney season week, 1? And that'll be a big test for Gaffney and J.L. Mann.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those two teams kind of come out. And, Gaffney with the week 0 off week, I guess you can call it. And then J.L. Mann playing a week 1 or a week 0 game, rather. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two teams come out and play in that week 1 matchup.
Week 0. As we put a bow on today's show, week 0, just a few days from today, 6 days now, we're getting closer and closer to that very event. Alex, week 0 will be fun as we look to week 0. What matchups, what games stand out in your opinion before we put a bow on episode number 1?
I'm really interested to see the Hillcrest Lawrence game. With Greg Porter, first-year head coach down at Lawrence. I'd like to see the Burns Teal Hanna game, and you're going to have a front row seat for that one. But, really, all of these are going to be good games just because high school football is back.
Sure. Burns Hanna's interesting. 2 really young teams. We know that this is going to be an interesting year for Burns, as it may be a rebuilding year. They have a lot to play for, but at the end of the day, they lost 30-some-odd players from last year's roster to the Burns Rebels. So a ton to replace several new faces on the coaching staff as well at Burns. It might indeed be a rebuilding type year there. Hanna only returned 2 starters on offense and 2 on defense. So that's a young Hanna team, man. And we talked with Jason Tone last week. They're going to be good, but just a lot of new faces on both sides of the ball. They do return their leading rusher, K.D. Patterson, 1,700 yards last year, 26 touchdowns. Matt Bozeman, a senior, Amari Ness. They have a million running backs, it seems like, for the offense. They run double wing. Quarterback Brandon Cunningham, he's a dual threat guy. They return their tight end, very fast defensive line, corner. Coming back, Jaden Martin, the defensive line, and Coach Tone does a good job calling that offense. So we will see you next Saturday. We'll react to what happened in week 0 as well as take your calls. It'll be episode 2 of season 6. I want to say thanks to Coach Morris and everyone who came out today at the Saturday Scramble. Want to say thanks to Tim Snow and Ben Pittman back in the Eagles Market Studios. Say thanks to Evan and Landon in promotions behind the scenes. Lonzo in the traffic department doing a great job. And thanks to Alex Guest, co-host right here on the Saturday Scramble. I'm Cole Bryson, and we will see you next week.